This episode is supported by Trustonomy, an original podcast from OneTrust. Every good relationship you have, personal or business, it involves trust. But we all know that trust doesn't just happen, right? We've all lost trust in a friend or a brand or a product. Trustonomy is a new podcast that looks at true stories from the past to understand how trust works and what makes it stronger and how to rebuild it when it's broken. Now, you know, I'm a sucker for a good podcast that weaves historical stories and relates it to what's happening today. So I thoroughly enjoyed this Trustonomy episode and recommend that you check that out as well. Search for Trustonomy in your podcast player. We'll also include a link in the show notes. Many thanks to the OneTrust team for their support.
Welcome to the Rocketship podcast. I'm Matt Goldman.
I'm Michael Saka.
And I'm Joelle Steiniger. Today we talked with Mike Brown Jr., partner at Bowery Capital. What do you guys think?
Yeah, this is one for anyone who's interested in sales. He goes through the entire sales stack, as he calls it, and gives us a ton of great products to use when building up that sales funnel.
Yeah, we covered so many tools here, a lot that I'd never heard of, and he broke down the different steps of the funnel in a really clear way, from pre-sales to post-sales, and it clarified a lot of a process that I'm not too familiar with.
All right, well, let's get into it. But first, we wanted to thank everyone who's leaving these great reviews for us on iTunes. Wanted to share one in particular from Josh Parolin. Josh said, "Can't say enough about this podcast. Well thought out questions, guests who are making things happen, and enough lessons to fill an Evernote notebook. Excited for more to come. Highly recommend for any founders, entrepreneurs, hackers, and marketers." Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, and please go leave us a review. You have no idea how much it helps. It helps us reach more people and keep producing shows. Let's get into it.
We'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Hover makes purchasing and managing your domain simple and easy. This week I talked to Max of Y Decision about why he uses Hover.
I was using Enom and GoDaddy for domain registrars, and I was looking for something different. I came across Hover then. What I really liked about Hover was it was easy to use. I had a clean interface. I'm a designer by heart, so I like things like that.
Go to hover.com and use the code SATISFIEDCustomers to get 10% off your domain purchase today.
Horse there.
You know what a gator is?
Horse there.
It's like an alligator.
There. There. Do it then?
Yes.
No, then.
HostGator makes web hosting easy and affordable. With packages starting at just $3.96 a month, it's the easiest way to get your next project online. Go to HostGator/promo/Rocketship to get 30% off today.
You've heard me rave about CodeShip before. It's because they're an incredible team building an amazing product that makes my days happier and my code more reliable. Recently, they shipped an incredible new feature. It's called Parallel CI, and it allows for faster testing than ever before. Early access customers like Product Hunt have improved their development speed tremendously. If you haven't yet, tell your dev team to start a free trial. They have a super generous free plan, and they also offer 20% off 3 months to all Rocketship listeners. Sign up at codeship.com/Rocketship.
Like, you are a partner at Bowery Capital, which is an early stage investment firm. Tell me kind of about your guys' philosophy in investing, and what's your focus when you're looking for teams to invest in?
Yeah, so I would say if you think about our fund, there's two key areas that you really want to hone in on. So we're sort of all B2B all the time. So everything and anything that we do has to fit the lens of business software. Most of it is transformational to either marketing or IT organizations. So we usually sell into the CMO or the CTO is kind of an easy way to think about it. So that's kind of pillar number one. And the second pillar, which is obviously what we're going to talk about, is we really don't, in this world where venture funds can kind of be a Swiss Army knife for you and do a lot of different things, we've actually taken the opposite approach and said, hey, pretty much the only thing we're going to help you out with is sales and revenue. So
interesting. And why did you guys choose that focus?
Because that's what is required to build a real company.
That's true. So you guys actually started a podcast, which was originally, as I understand it, an internal podcast, and you guys have kind of opened it up. What was kind of the motivation behind kind of sharing that with the world, really?
It was really twofold. I mean, we had a number of folks externally who did the podcast that wanted to share them with their teams, and the kind of broader ecosystem or content spheres that they sat in. But then a lot of our founders said, hey, listen, this would be great from branding and marketing, and you guys talk to us a lot about this internally, but it isn't really touched upon externally. You should kind of get this out there and promote it.
Kind of what has been the reception for you guys?
It's been pretty positive. I mean, it's very specific in its approach, so we like that in most ways. We're really tracking a few key metrics, and I'd say everything's been pretty positive. I actually learned a fair amount from you guys, to be honest, on how to do this right. So I would say it's been pretty good. I mean, we get a lot of outreach from young salespeople in SaaS companies who are interested in learning more or diving deeper onto those topics. So it's great to sort of connect folks in the community. It's been awesome for our founders because there's a lot of challenges, especially pre-sales and post-sales related activities. Most of them kind of know how to sell products and services, or they're kind of a natural at pitching their product. But setting up at least repeatable processes and using technology, both in sort of before you sell and then after you sell, is not something that any of them really knows from the outset. So it's great to sort of have them, listen to the podcasts and then ask a lot of questions off of it. And then the final thing is it's been pretty amazing for new investment, because founders can really sort of Google us and see, hey, what are these guys all about? I haven't heard of the fund. It's only been around for a short while. And once they do that, we can really see they can really see rather look, oh wow, these guys have a sales podcast. This is pretty interesting. And then they obviously go and listen to 5 of them, and so we get a lot of qualitative emails of people saying, wow, I didn't know you had this. This is amazing. Thank you type of stuff.
That's really awesome. So I'm curious actually to go back to what you said about your focus on working with people specifically on sales and revenue building activities. When you decided to focus on that, were you seeing that there wasn't a focus or enough focus at all in the industry, or were people kind of focused on the wrong things and you found a better way to do it?
I think, it's all good. Firms define themselves in terms of managing their portfolio and adding value to companies however they see fit, and I'm not really one to judge that. I think just the size of our firm being a small seed investment fund, we had to really pick an angle or pick an area that was going to have the highest degree of impact. And then we were an investor in a lot of SaaS companies. So, for the past 7 years, I had seen a lot of these founders get hung up on this very issue. A lot of them can build product. A lot of them can hire in engineers. But on the sales side, if you come from a technical background, you just generally don't have that upbringing and capability. So it was sort of part, we had seen the challenge and the problem, and then part, we just didn't have, we didn't have a lot of resources, and so we had to focus. So that's kind of specific to Bowery. I would say more external to the market. Yeah, I think that in our business, at least business, B2B software, SaaS software, it's increasingly important to ensure that you have this capability very early on. And I would say I'm not sure why my peers haven't focused a ton on it, but it's usually the biggest challenge that most companies face early on.
Let's talk about that a little bit. We kind of before we talked about some of the kind of services that you recommend your companies use, and I'd love to hear about what you recommend at what stage in sales. And if you could take us through that a little bit. We talked about kind of 3 tiers: pre-sales, sales, and post-sales. And I'm hoping we can start with the pre-sales and talk about some of the software that people should be using and why at that stage.
Yeah, so the way you want to really think about this as a company is you're probably getting reached out by and hit up by a lot of people who are interested in your software. You probably put out a press release, announcing your financing or something happened, and you have some external event that creates some lead generation. Most founders, it becomes really problematic if you're just going to sit in an Excel spreadsheet and try and deal with this in sort of Google Apps. It can be very, very daunting, and then you're obviously not developing any repeatability to it. So we kind of think about in pre-sales 3 core buckets: so CRM, lead management, and sales intelligence. So these are kind of the things that you need to buy upfront and very, very quickly to actually capture the inbound that's coming. The best in-class product, which is obviously no surprise to anybody, is Salesforce for this. So we sort of just encourage our founders, look, get a Salesforce instance, get that up and running. You can rely on other founders to give you the analytics and the reporting capabilities. It's all pretty self-explanatory. You're moving people through a funnel, and you're sort of wanting you or your salespeople to consistently ingest and put data into that system of record. Some of the other ones I would think about that are more up and coming and our companies have had a lot of success with. One of them is now actually acquired by Salesforce, called Relate IQ, which actually is our system of record here, for what it's worth. And that company, largely provided not only the system of record that Salesforce did, but it allowed the teams to essentially work together and share all of the data and information. So you're moving from people having to input all this information to it just existing by virtue of the fact that it's connecting to your, LinkedIn information, all your email, any of your sort of external third-party data that you bring in or license. So definitely Relate IQ, I'd say, is up and coming, but something that people use a lot. And then the third one I'd say is Sugar CRM. And I only say it because some folks have a very specific sales process, and they're very sort of technical about how they operate and the industries that they operate in. And so Sugar we found to be really good because it's highly modular and it's not as sort of, walled garden as Salesforce is. So you can do a lot with the tool from a flexibility standpoint.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's CRM. On lead management, I won't touch a lot on these companies, but I will say that you're gonna start to basically generate and track leads in conjunction with or your CRM kind of bolts into your lead management software. Most of the firms that you hear about are sort of your HubSpot, Marketo, Pardot, Eloqua. We don't really recommend, especially at the early stages, that companies buy expensive lead management products. So, HubSpot has a Jumpstart program. It's $80 per month. It's really cheap. The software is as good as it gets in this, early stage of a business. Probably the largest area we see people fall down is they buy Marketo for its lead qualification capabilities. But the cost of the product is just so significant, and it's really, really hard to make that worth your time, especially when you're at, let's say seed financed or have less than a few $1 million in your business.
This episode is brought to you by Miro. Whether it's agile planning, Scrum events, or technical diagramming, Miro is built for engineering workflows like yours. Enable your team to plan, align, and execute on your infrastructure initiatives all in one single place. That means you can plan your infrastructure efforts with intuitive project management and agile-focused features directly on a Miro board. Miro also has a ton of integrations like with Jira and Azure and Rally, so you can import tasks as native cards so you can see the big picture. Plus, Miro's estimation app gives you clear understanding of work scope and lets you identify gaps in analysis or understanding and set clear expectations for delivery, which is priceless. So, your first 3 Miro boards are free forever when you sign up. So go to Miro.com/podcast. That's Miro.com/podcast. podcast.
So on the Marketo, can you kind of elaborate a little bit on what that lead intelligence is, or how they're qualifying it?
Yeah, so this is sort of the Hatfields and the McCoys of our industry, right? HubSpot has sort of taken the approach on lead management of ingest pretty much everything and anything, and your website or your inside sales team or your outbound selling efforts are really going to drive, the qualification. So put it all at the top of the funnel. Don't worry about it. HubSpot will do nurture and drip campaigns on everyone. And then it's really up to the team to qualify. So they really didn't pay much attention to an automated lead score or an automated engine that helps you really determine higher or lower quality leads.
Okay.
The opposite of this was Marketo, where they basically said, hey, listen, we care so much about the lead scoring engine. And if you get, someone fills out a form on your website, or if you get a, inside salesperson talking to someone in a demo, or if there's a direct sales conversation, those should all be treated very, very differently. They should all be sort of thought of differently. And as we move people through the funnel, the lead scoring engine updates and the drip campaigns and all the sort of marketing that you're doing through lead management changes as a result of that in an automated fashion. So it has nothing to do really with the externality of your sales team.
I see.
But as a startup, it's very attractive. And especially if you're in a transaction-oriented business, meaning low-price software where it can be bought right on a site, you want to believe that Marketo engine is going to be great for you because you can essentially alleviate a lot of discussions with people. But I would say we haven't found, at least in our portfolio companies, we haven't found the cost. It's very expensive software to be sufficient enough to really, override HubSpot's Jumpstart program right now, at least.
Let's get into the sales intelligence. I really like this area, and I'd love to hear kind of what you recommend for people to be using when they use this kind of data intelligence for their sales.
Yeah, so there's been a number of, essentially you have your CRM, you handle some sort of nurturing campaigns and lead management. And then oftentimes your salespeople want more information about said account or want to be able to essentially build their own pipeline. Well, how do they do that? They use a multitude of tools, but I'll give you sort of the 2 or 3 that we really love. Salesforce has a product called data.com. It's pretty well known by everyone. It's, essentially from about $25 a month to about $150 a month, depending upon what you want. But where that product has been very, very effective is if you use Salesforce as your CRM and you have a lot of data that has been input by salespeople that isn't ultimately either correct or as large of a data set as you want. I mean, salespeople, as pretty much anyone who listens to this podcast knows, hate dealing with ingesting and putting in their own sales information. So what data.com does, both from the standpoint of develop a broader point of view, but they'll also do data cleanup, which is super important. Inside View is another really good product. That's a traditional sales intelligence solution that a lot of people use today. Works pretty well. It works in a similar way as data.com does. The one challenge I would say with Inside View, they're getting better at this, is the social media component of what they ingest into your CRM can get very, very daunting. So they have way too many fields and you're going to get almost too much information on a potential customer. So I would just be careful if you do use that. And then the last one I'll mention is Sales Genie. Companies use that as well, and that can be pretty effective too. The downside there is a little bit different from Inside View. It's more from the standpoint of the data quality, I would say, is not as good as a data.com or the other or Inside View.
So how do you know when you move from kind of the pre-sales process to the sales process?
Yeah, so you're sort of not lockstepping this or you're not sort of thinking about this in the same way that we are. But from an entrepreneur standpoint, you really, you're going to want to develop all these sales tools and the frameworks before you go out and sell a product or service. But the reality of the situation is it never works that way, and you have a million things going on. So we sort of just encourage our founders to block off time, maybe the 2 or 3 Fridays before you actually put out a press release and launch, and just devote it to, hey, I'm going to get all of my pre-sales tools up and running just so I have it. I know it's not going to work as well as I want it to, and I know it's not going to be as great as some large SaaS companies tooling, but just devote a little bit of time, get your sort of pre-sales effort ready to go up and running, because it saves you a lot of time down the line. And don't worry about the fact that you're going to have to kind of iterate and change stuff around. That's natural. That will happen. You'll have different types of customers, different types of data. Nurture campaigns will be different, and everything will need to change. So I wouldn't focus a ton on the quality of it, just getting it up and running so you have your system of record, your marketing automation, and then some sales intelligence. Once you have that done, and this is why I say the and or, you are basically losing accounts or not able to actually manage a sale effectively, then you really need to ensure that you have appropriate, sales tooling. So the second pillar above pre-sales would be sales, and now you've got your kind of tools, you sort of know how to ingest data, you know how to nurture potential leads. Now you're going to actually go out and sell a product or service. How do you do that? And again, we have kind of 3 pieces to that. So there's collateral management, there's communications tools, and then there's basically sales enablement, which most folks know that this piece over the other 2. So collateral management, the undisputed leader in that space is really ClearSlide. In our opinion, we work with the company, a lot. The product is extremely cheap. It's essentially an analytical sales tool. When you are delivering demos, we'll really tell you what's working, what's not working, what components of the pitch are working, what components of the pitch are not working. Very, very effective for you to sort of pivot and move your own, selling equation and selling transcript through, a very rigorous product. So we really just tell people just buy the software and use that. There are a number of other ones, but I'm not sure they're worth going into.
I had a quick question about the ClearSlide. Is it actually like managing the engagement when you send a slide to someone, or how does it know the effectiveness?
So they have basically a bunch of different customer-facing interaction points. So you can send through email, you can do a web demo, or you can do in the ClearSlide panel a face-to-face. If you're meeting someone face-to-face, they look at mouse movements, they look at viewability times, they look at email opens, they look at responses. There's a number of things that they essentially go in and map, and then they essentially put it all into a central database and deliver you back a set of sort of business intelligence and business analytics that says, hey, this resonates, this doesn't, change this, do this to that, move things around. There's a lot more under the hood, but for the purposes of the discussion, it's, basically just giving you analytics so that as you are selling in the market, whether your pitch is resonating or things are coming off, correctly or incorrectly to people.
Very cool. I hadn't actually heard of that.
Yeah, so those guys are great. You're obviously going to need, so moving to communications tools, you're obviously going to need a method of communication to talk to people. You have to communicate with potential customers. There's 2 schools of thought for this, I would say. A lot of people take the cheap or near free approach. So most folks have heard of like Uber Conference and GoToMeeting and Join.me. And WebEx. Those are awesome and totally fine, and they work very well. Couple that people don't know about that we've actually started to use internally, and then a bunch of our companies have started to use. One company called Blue Jeans, which is a phenomenal product that, if you do have the budget for, is really, really good at more effective video conferencing. So they've built a pretty incredible solution that solves for a lot of the latency issues in video conferencing. And if you're ever doing video related sales pitches, you probably they are expensive, but they are probably one of the best solutions out there. And then the other one, which is a little bit lower priced, and a bunch of our companies are using to a large degree of success, but it's still a very new product, is one called High Five. So they sell actually a physical piece of hardware that you put on top of your computer or your TV, and it has the same type of latency problem-solving capabilities. There's a lot of multi-tenant and multi-use elements built into it, so you can have sales teams in all different areas. And we've actually used it across devices too. So you can have your Android phone with video, and then someone else can be on a computer, and then someone else can be in a conference room, and it's pretty amazing. So if you get a chance to get on their invite list, it's a great new early product that some of our companies have used.
Yeah, very cool. I hadn't even heard of that one either. Just checking it out. That looks amazing.
Yeah, they're really good. And then sales enablement is really the last piece of your sort of sales, toolkit. And these are sort of helping, similar to sort of the pre-sales efforts of using data to keep you more informed about your potential lead. These really are for frontline salespeople to help them prepare for those actual customer interactions. And so a lot of people have heard of sort of like Catalyst Cloud. Yesware is another one that's really, really well known to folks. There are two that I'll mention that don't that are emerging and recent, and one is a little bit farther along. So if you care about sort of keeping post your initial sales conversation intact and maintaining the follow-up and the consistency of approach to that potential lead, there is a company called Tout, which a lot of sort of SaaS companies use and will know. And it's a great tool for maintaining communication as a salesperson with your potential customers. It's a great tool for sort of continuing to interact in an automated manner. You just kind of set it up, set the flows, and then kind of set it and forget it, if you will. And then another one, which is extremely new that not many people will know about, but we have two of our portfolio companies using it, and it's very, very powerful, is one called Outreach. And so that company essentially competes with Tout, and the difference though is when you are able to close a sale, they then build a lot of the campaign or sort of interaction and communication connected into your customer service organization. So that handoff between sales and customer service or customer success, and then all of the associated organizations. So if you move to a legal contract, there's a set of communication protocols that need to happen. If you move to a signed contract, a different set of protocols need to happen. And so these guys are great at really providing automated ways for your salespeople to communicate and interact.
Very
so
cool.
Yeah, if you can, check out Tout and Outreach, because those guys are doing great things.
So now you've got kind of your sales process, and now let's talk about the post-sale. How do you manage the follow-up and some of the social engagement and the customer service that comes post-sale?
So you basically have obviously set up all your pre-sales tooling. You've gotten a foundation for actually how you're going to go out and sell a product or service. You've then gone out to market and used all these great tools to help you sell the thing. Now, after you've sold to them, what do you do? How do you keep in touch? What sort of protocols do you put in place to maintain a lot of that? And the way to think about this is I don't mean post-sales here from the standpoint of you've sold the product or service already. This kind of is you've already gotten through a set of communications, and now you really want to keep in touch with that person. So you can think of this both from sort of the end of your sales process, but then also from the customer service piece. A lot of people just think of it from the customer service piece, but it isn't 100%. that. And so we break this down really into 3 pieces as well. So there's sort of email marketing in terms of, you got to kind of mass communicate with your leads that are down in the funnel, and then also your existing customer base. There's a kind of social engagement piece, which we touched on, which is social media relationships. And then there's customer service, which is sort of what everybody knows about this, tools that help you manage the customer service and the support requests and things like that. On the email side, pretty much everybody has their flavor of vendors. You can go sort of, cheap, kind of expensive, and then really expensive. You're on the really expensive side if you're a larger SaaS company and you need a lot of sort of individual personalization as it relates to email. There are a tremendous amount of people who buy ExactTarget, Sailthrough, Responsys, these type of companies. If you're sort of more low end in the flavor of kind of a startup company, you probably are buying either MailChimp or Constant Contact, or sort of the 2 names that people know. And then even if you're kind of lower end, there's the sort of SendGrid and those type of companies that are a little bit more transactional and mass in their scale. So that's sort of email. Social, you obviously have a existing customer base you want to communicate with. You have an audience beyond that you're trying to sell a product to. And so we pretty much recommend Hootsuite or Buffer from the outset. They're really good tools. They're very easy to understand. You don't need to get crazy about this. If you do move upstream, you can look at products or services like Social Flow, but not entirely sure, especially in the SaaS world, that they're completely necessary. So just buy a base level product for communications with existing customers and late stage leads in your funnel from a social engagement standpoint. And then customer success is really the one that everybody sort of talks about and knows. The few that I'll recommend here. So Zendesk is sort of the market leader, and most people know this business. It's helpful from 2 ways, especially as an early stage company. First, it allows you to really repeat communication with your existing customers and set up a very simple and sort of easy to understand quote unquote help desk. But the other thing that a lot of people don't realize is that all that information is captured, and then you're able to create sort of an FAQ or an information repository through these interactions. So you don't actually have to sit there and spend hours upon hours upon hours writing a custom wiki or whatever for an FAQ. Zendesk now with the product, that will all sort of spin up and be created for you. So pretty much, if any of you buy consumer software, you've obviously gone to a fact page or help page. Those today generally are mostly powered by Zendesk. The other one I'll mention, again, coming back to the kind of Salesforce product, is Desk.com. Surprisingly, a lot of people like this, largely because of the connectedness into the CRM. So it allows you to keep all of the information in your CRM, and then Desk.com serves as the front end that's similar to a Zendesk, and really gets people interacting on the site. They have a set of rules engines that actually will sort of communicate based on a certain set of variables. So you could say, hey, every 15, 30, 45 days, communicate with this customer and say this or that to them. So there's kind of a nurture campaign or a keeping in communication campaign with people that they do a good job of. So those 2 would be, I guess, from a customer service standpoint, those 2 are pretty good, and we recommend them pretty heavily.
Yeah, lately with our product HookFeed, we've been looking for ways to export data. And what we learned is Help Scout, I know Zendesk, I think Desk.com too, have ways to populate the sidebar of the page. So when you're talking to a customer, you can pull in data from a lot of these pre-sales or sales tools.
Yeah.
And it carries everything that you've been collecting since day one through to your customer support tool and really makes it into more of a customer success product. So those are all really good at that too.
Yeah, sure. And then I'll just say, so there's 2 macro points that I'll sort of make in closing about the entirety of the sales tooling world. The first of which is all of these tools that I've mentioned to you are amazing and awesome, but the budget will add up pretty quickly. So I don't suggest that people go out tomorrow and spend, $5,000 a month buying every single one of these things. You can really, especially at the early stages of a business, we find that you can really just get away with a CRM, a really cheap marketing automation engine, and then some, sales collateral or communication management piece. I mean, the kind of sales pillar. So buy ClearSlide and buy some of these companies, because you actually have to sell. The post-sales tooling, it kind of can come later, and most of this can be built through, a wiki that you create initially. Even though the pricing has come down substantially, we still find that founders will sort of scratch their head when we recommend all these things and say, wow, this is just like really expensive, and I'm not sure I can buy all of it. And then, so that's one thing. Don't feel like you have to spend a lot of money on all of this stuff. And CRM is really the base layer for everything. So that's, I would say, if you were going to hold a gun to my head, the only thing that I think you really need. And then the second piece is all of this stuff that you're now going to buy, you really are ultimately going to hold somebody or a multitude of people accountable for these components. So pre-sales, sales, and post-sales. Easily explained, this is your sales people, the people who actually go out and put information into the CRM or sell the product or deal with the customer success. So over the top of all three of these things, you are going to need some level of analytics and business intelligence. So I would say not very early on in your company's life, but when you do have a number of customers and you are starting to sort of care about this, the two best companies in this category right now, one is called Exactly. So that is effectively helping you manage this entire process from pre-selling through to post-selling for the individual salespeople. And the second one, which is very new, but doing a great job with this, is called Clari, CLARI. And so that's kind of a forecasting, and most people sort of hack this all together right now in spreadsheets. And how is my post-sales organization doing? How is my sales organization doing? How is my pre-sales effort doing? These two companies will help you do this in a much more automated manner.
That is awesome. I've been looking for something like Clari, actually. And I didn't know it existed.
Yeah, so these guys are, they're very new, but they came at the problem as a group of salespeople themselves. So they understand it substantially.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this. This has been a wealth of information. Where can we keep up with you, and where do we find the podcast online?
Yeah, so our podcast, if you just Google Bowery Capital podcast, it'll be the first thing that comes up, I think. I'm pretty sure. If not, it's bowerycap.com/blog/startup sales podcast. And that's where you can find us. And then all of this information that I've discussed, we have floating around on various SlideShare instances and social media instances, a guide to startup sales tools. So pretty much running through every single one of the vendors, the pricing, why you should care about them for every one of these, pillars that I talk about. It's about an 80-page document. You can print it out, walk through it, pick a few of the vendors that you like, tell them Bowery Capital sent you, and you'll probably get a better deal.
We will actually. Yeah, definitely. Well, cool. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, sure, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Looking for more entrepreneurial content? Check out this week's Bowery podcast, where Mike talks about unique angles on customer service with Whitney Hillier of Bitly.
Yeah, I think you have to be thinking about customer success from the beginning. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to hire a customer success team on day one or when you get your first customer. But again, making sure that, once you have sort of that base of business and making sure that you have people who are solely focused on them, because what they need to do is they need to not just, manage those clients, keep them happy, renew them, answer their questions, train them, that kind of stuff, but they also have to take all of their feedback and they really have to loop that in with product. So I try to tell people all the time not to necessarily, like when you think of customer success, you actually sort of have to couple that with both sales and product, right? Because the customer success team plays such an integral role in both of those things. And when you're looking at product development, you really have to make sure you have those, customer success professionals who can, take what the customer says and translate it into, conversations with the product team.
Search for Bowery Capital Startup Sales Podcast in iTunes today.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Rocketship Podcast. If you enjoyed it, we have tons of other awesome episodes on our website. Check them out, rocketship.fm.
And make sure to check out our app discount section, where we feature discounts from amazing companies like Treehouse, Wistia, Woo Themes, all giving you exclusive discounts for being a Rocketship listener. So go to rocketship.fm/essentials.
I'm Dr. Ray Wynn-Grant, wildlife ecologist and host of the award-winning podcast Going Wild, produced by Nature on PBS. In the brand new season of Going Wild, we're tackling the big question, how can humans look at our relationship to nature differently? And with the help of special guests like Christian Cooper, host of Nat Geo's Extraordinary Birder, and Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, co-creator of the How to Save a Planet podcast. Follow Going Wild with Dr. Ray Wynn-Grant on your favorite podcast app.
Are you looking for a podcast that'll make you laugh?
You came to the wrong place.
That's not us.
That's not us.
Well, it is. We are a husband and wife who chat about raw, real relationship topics.
Like sex.
Like money.
Like marriage and kids.
But we're not afraid to talk about how your newborn baby probably isn't as cute as you think it is.
If you're in need of entertainment while you're driving to work, because that sucks, we can join you in the suckage, kind of like being in your ear.
Not physically.
So if you want to laugh,
come check us out.
Brought to you by the Laughing Couple Podcast.